All right, so um, for like the 10th time, I am Anya Nielsen, and this week I decided to look further into childhood sexual abuse and look into the worldviews and the social work views as well. So I watched a TED Talk. It was called Healing from Sexual Abuse Can Start with One Word, and it was by a woman, Rena Romano. It was a great video. I really enjoyed watching it. It was about like 15 minutes long. And basically, she starts off by talking about her own personal experience with sexual or childhood sexual abuse. She was sexually abused by her older brother. And luckily, she was faced with a lot of support. Her mom immediately believed what she was told and felt very bad for everything that had happened. But as she gets older, she realizes that the support that she was blessed with, a lot of people were not as blessed with that support. And her kind of main idea was how you and I react and speak to sexual abuse survivors can make a difference in whether we shut down or get help. If healing begins by telling, then we must make telling safe. So she goes on to talk about a better response for hearing about someone's trauma. She also says a statistic that 93% of child molesters actually know the victims, and it's not always stranger danger like we were taught. And so, like I said before, she was molested by her brother, and the fact that the molesters know the victims personally, whether it's a father or an uncle or a grandfather or a super close family friend or a cousin or a brother, or obviously those in female form as well. There's not a specific gender for child molesters. And this just makes the telling even more difficult, because she goes on to say that many are blamed or punished or even kicked out when they speak up. Because, I mean, if you are going to your mother and saying that your father sexually abused you, will she believe you or will she believe her husband? I mean, it's a difficult thing. And she goes on to say that another reason that a lot of people don't really speak up is because nobody likes receiving what she calls uncomfortable sympathy. Kind of the response she gave as an example was, "Don't let your past define you, you poor thing." Or just get over it. Like, that sucks, but you have to move on, kind of sympathy, which is an awkward thing and normally doesn't make the receiver super comfortable either. And she says that giving positive support gives victims the courage to go on with their lives and live a happy life. And she says you do this by giving praise and also giving encouraging reactions, kind of like, you are so strong, like you are doing so well, you have come so far, kind of stuff like that. And then I read for my scholarly article. It was actually like a BYU article, and it was called Childhood Sexual Abuse, Other Childhood Factors and Pathways to Survivors' Adult Relationship Quality by Eric Walker, Thomas Holman, and Dean Busby. They just kind of talked about the lasting effects of childhood sexual abuse and whether or not that will majorly negatively impact future relationships. So I just kind of pulled some quotes. It was a very, very long article, and I just pulled some quotes that kind of summarized it. So I'll just read those. Results showed that childhood abuse and other family of origin variables work primarily through the adult survivor's perceptions of the events of his or her childhood. this current impact variable, along with the current level of depression, work through an emotion laden relationship variable, level of emotional flooding during couple conflict to influence the relationship quality outcome variable. And then they go on to say that there may not be an isolated or straightforward relationship between the sexual abuse of children and adult variables such as relational quality. And then they also say that negative childhood events, including sexual abuse, were likely related to adult relationship quality, but the direct effects of the events and processes were anticipated to be small, so not like super, super significant. And then kind of like, this is like the results and the like solutions part. Childhood sexual abuse was but one of several interrelated family and childhood factors that could carry forward into adult romantic relationships. So it's not a definite, it just is a possibility that if it's not been worked through, it could have some negative impacts. And some kind of ways that they suggest to help with this is including adult partners in the treatment of adult childhood sexual abuse survivors. They also said that adult intimate relationships have a great potential for fostering hardiness within adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse as couples begin to recognize how they can influence relational interactions and partners begin understanding and validating each other's emotional experiences. So they talk a lot about going to therapy and getting treatment like that in the article to help couples grow stronger together and not further apart because of childhood sexual abuse. The code of ethics connection that I chose was just the simple commitment to clients, the primary responsibility to promote the well-being of clients. Because obviously when, being faced with people who have dealt with childhood sexual abuse, you do need to be committed to them, and you need to be committed to handling the situation the right way and all that stuff. And then for my worldviews versus social work perspective, for worldviews, I pretty much just said that it is unclear to most people in the world on how to react when someone opens up about their childhood sexual abuse, which is an understandable thing. If you have not dealt with it in your own personal life, just like a lot of other things, it can just be hard to show empathy towards someone else just because you don't know what it's like to be in their shoes. But yeah, it's important to become educated on that. And then many do not speak up out of fear even when they become adults. So she kind of talked a lot about how it's more how we kind of think that like kids aren't going to say anything, but once they get older they'll say something. A lot of the time when they get older they still don't say anything just out of fear for how other adults will react. And social work perspective from the article, the main things that I got from this perspective was that there are a lot of ways to work through trauma in order to have a healthy relationship. Like it's not kind of like a doomed thing or like which is obviously a really good thing. And then the direct effect of childhood sexual trauma and relationship quality is not a huge correlation. And then the couple things that I found interesting, I just thought it was interesting how in the TED Talk it was shared that nobody wants uncomfortable sympathy, which I feel like we can kind of relate to a lot of other topics in social work. When working with people who maybe are not as privileged as you or have been faced with a lot of things that you haven't been faced with, like terrible things. It's just nobody wants to be like, oh, you poor baby, so that's important. And then also just that there is a lot of hope to have a healthy relationship after enduring sexual trauma, which I think is just a comforting thing for anybody who has endured that. And so I don't know, I enjoyed reading about that. And then my question is, what are some responses that you think would be considered supportive and encouraging to clients who have endured sexual childhood sexual abuse, and what are some responses that would be deemed uncomfortable sympathy responses. This isn't like a super hard question, but it was kind of like something that really stood out to me when I was watching the TED Talk. So, and then these are my references. Thank you for listening.